Hello everybody, I'm Colin D. Ellis and welcome to the Culture and Coffee podcast, where every episode I discuss a new topic of workplace culture and provide some insights and some practical things for you to do. Don't forget to like, subscribe and to share with people who you may think would be interested. Okay, let's get on with today's episode. Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of the Culture and Coffee podcast. Coffee today is from Ecuador. Very nice coffee. I know what you're thinking, where is Ecuador? I've heard it. Isn't it in South America? Yes, it's a kind of top left as you look at South America, so the northwest coast. And actually my favorite coffees in the Americas are from that kind of Pacific coast, so Ecuador, then you've got Colombia above it, and then you've got the kind of Central America, so Panama, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Guatemala. They're all my kind of favorite coffees from Central South America, all around that little Pacific coast there. So yes, it's an Ecuadorian coffee. A little bit of geography to get today's podcast started. Okay. On today's session, I'm going to be talking about the five types of cultures really, and how you can spot them. Now, this came from a conversation that I had with somebody recently. And she said, if I describe what my culture is like, can you kind of give me some insights into where we are and you know, what we can do? And which of course I did, which I'm going to share with you. But also if you want to find out. So earlier this year, I shared the fact that I've been working with the University of Georgia for the best part of 9 months to develop a quiz that not only gives you a sense of where you're at right now, but also produces a report and sends you a report to tell you, so that if you go to 5culturesquiz.com, you just answer a few questions. It takes about 5 minutes. And it'll give you a sense of where you're at right now based on obviously how you answer the questions, and then the report gets generated within the hour and sent to you. However, what I wanted to do was use the podcast to give you kind of some insights into that. So let me start by talking about the two observable factors that you see day to day. Now, this is applicable to any team, in any industry, in any country, on any continent throughout the world. And it's a callback to the work that I did for Culture Fix in 2019. So when I wrote Culture Fix, I spent a lot of time researching different teams, different cultures. I looked at the good, I looked at the bad. I developed a model based on the 6 pillars. Here are the 6 things that you see that are consistent with every company. And I still think I was the first person to do that. He says humbly. But I hadn't been able to find that myself, so I decided to go away and do that. So there are kind of 6 pillars of culture. I might as well tell you what they are. So their vision and purpose is 1, values is 2, personality and communication is 3, behavior is 4, collaboration is 5, innovation is 6. So these are the 6 key factors, which when you actually define your culture around these 6 things, you generate the foundations for success. Most organizations just leave it to chance. And on some of the things, they'll be good, on some of them, not so good. But in terms of what you observe day to day, yes, you observe those things, but what are people to demonstrate? So there's 2 things, right? And that's emotional intelligence. So people are able to demonstrate their emotional intelligence or not. And also engagement, so their commitment to their job and their commitment to others, right? And those 2 factors really determine what kind of culture that you have at any one time. And so when emotional intelligence, and it's important to state here that culture is often determined by the prevailing mindset of the team. So you ever had those days when you're all in a bit of a funk? I was talking to someone not so long ago actually about football teams. Is when football teams are low on confidence. Let's say a goalkeeper concedes goals, defenders concede goals, a striker doesn't score goals, midfielders don't create chances, right? you get this sense of malaise in the team, and commentators call it confidence. They're low on confidence right now. Essentially what it is a mindset that almost infects the team. And when I work with sports team, I talk about this and talk about what people can do to overcome the mindset. And when you make the goal great team culture, you will eventually succeed. It doesn't happen overnight, but you've got to have that commitment to it. You will eventually succeed. But most just go for the short-term approach. And the same is true of corporate organizations, government organizations, short-term approach. It'll figure itself out. We don't have to do anything. And of course, that's not true. So when the emotional, so let me very quickly, emotional intelligence is the ability to be aware, is to be self-aware, to know how you feel, understand how you feel, to moderate your behavior accordingly, and then to build relationships judiciously and empathetically. That's what being emotionally intelligent is. And when you're emotionally intelligent, you are the best version of yourself, because you kind of understand how you feel, you can process things logically, you can respond without losing control of your emotion. All of these things, we're very happy with who we are when we're being emotional intelligent. So people call this the best version of yourself, right? Engagement really it centers around how much do you care? How much do you care about the type of job that you do? How much do you care about getting better at that job? How much do you care about the people around you? How much do you care about what the organization is trying to do? How much do you care about their vision and their goals and the targets that they've got? Someone asked me a question recently, can you be emotionally intelligent but low on engagement? 100% you can. You can bring the best version of yourself to work every day, understand how you feel, you're self-aware, all of those kind of things, and then just not do any work. And everybody's had those days. God, I had those days. Listen, even as a self-employed person, sometimes I have the best of intentions. I'm like, right, I know what I've got to do. Let's just do it. And then usually get consumed by this sense of tiredness, or maybe there are one too many things on the list and you don't end up doing it. And you're very good at talking emotionally about how you feel about not doing the work, but you still don't do the work. And so that's that low engagement. And you want to make those days kind of the fewer of those, the better. So the team is very much infected by the prevailing mindset. So when people have low emotional intelligence and low engagement, we have what a stagnant culture is. So what are some hallmarks of a stagnant culture? Well, in stagnant cultures, people don't really interact with each other. Like, they're low on conversation. They wouldn't engage socially in any way, shape, or form. They don't talk about the work. They're quite happy to be talked at. And this is where the manager usually of the team feels like they're having to work double time because there's just nothing coming back. People are unapproachable. Often they go missing for days on end. I had an athlete who I talked to once, a track and field athlete, and she said sometimes within their team, they had a stagnant culture, and athletes would just do their own thing and they wouldn't tell each other where they were. And they talked, and I said, oh, how did you excuse it? She said, oh, we talked about the fact that we just needed to focus on ourselves for a short period of time. And of course, everybody needs to focus on themselves and what they need to do, but that doesn't mean you stop interacting with the other team members, right? But that happens in a stagnant culture. In stagnant cultures, when people low emotional intelligence, low engagement, you get this hero mentality. So these are all signs, right, of the kind of culture that you have. People, only I can do this. Nobody else can do this but me. For sports teams, is like the team's success depends on me. That's the thinking. That's the mindset that they have. If only everybody would work as hard as me. And that's low emotional intelligence. It's hubris 101. Thinking that you're brilliant at absolutely everything and everyone else is rubbish. Also, stagnant cultures is where you see poor performance, poor behavior, and there's no consequence. Nobody ever talks about it. Nobody gets held to account. Stagnant cultures, it's just a whole load of nothing. And I think you'll know what I mean by that. When you wake up in the morning, there's just a vacancy. You're like you're not really that passionate either way. It's like, and you'll say things like, oh, same shit, different day. That won't work here. That's the kind of prevailing mindset. So there's some signs of a stagnant culture. What does it take to turn around a stagnant culture? Well, it needs managers who know. The answer to most of these questions, by the way, is managers who know what they're doing. but also people who understand that they're part of a bigger team. See a lot of stagnant cultures in hybrid work, funnily enough, because often in stagnant cultures, you have selfish people who just want the conditions for themselves. Well, it doesn't suit me to work in the office on a Monday and Tuesday. Well, that's not it. It's about teamwork. It's not about you. It's about what's best for the team. And organizations are still navigating this and doing a pretty poor job in my own personal view. And it's not that people want to be selfish necessarily. Often their organization has promised them the world and then they pull the rug and then they expect everybody to conform. And that's also really bad as well. In fact, that's more of a combatant culture, which I'll come to in a second. So low emotional intelligence, low engagement, stagnant culture. Now, the example that I was given when lady asked me, when she described her culture, was a pleasant culture. So some of the things that she described was, we have lots of meetings. There's very rarely an agenda. And even if there is, we don't stick to it. We always go over time. People are always late. People are distracted in these meetings. If they're hybrid, people are clearly working on other things, but nobody ever says anything. She said that the people are really nice to each other's faces, but can be vicious behind each other's backs. And so what you've got here, to a degree, the vicious behind each other's backs strays more into a combatant culture. But emotional intelligence, you've got high emotional intelligence in a pleasant culture. So people want to be the best version of themselves. So they want to invite everybody to everything. Team meetings involve everybody all of the time. And these are those meetings where you go around the room. Let's get an update from everyone around the room. And there's 20 people in the room. And it just sucks the life out of you. Because we don't want to leave anybody out. We want to make sure that we invite everybody to everything. These are the kind of organizations, corporate organizations, where everybody gets copied into every email. They're not challenging. You never feel stretched. If anything, you feel bored. Listen, you're happy enough because you're surrounded by a good group of people, and you'll say things like, "Oh, I work with some really good people. Oh, do you hit your deadlines?" No. No, we never do. What are you working on right now? Oh, heaps of things. We've got more work than we know what to do with. When people ask you how it's going to, can you get it done? Oh, it's going to be hard. We can do it, but it's going to be hard. Immediately you've got kind of the fixed mindset. That's that low engagement. Fixed mindset is like, well, we'll give it a go. It's never worked before. Like the word but, B-U-T, you hear it all the time in pleasant cultures. Yeah, we could do that, but there's always an excuse. That real lack of engagement, there's always an excuse not to do things. But there's lots of empathy, and that's good. But there's lots of good intent, and that's good. But generally, it's blind optimism. Too many things, not enough people. Too many things on the task list. When I work with sports teams, there's just no challenge. All the emphasis is on the captain to do all of the motivating, or the manager to do all of the motivating. And the manager will say things like, "Oh, really, really good group of players here. Really good group of players. We've really bonded, we've really connected, but results are rubbish." People think that, it doesn't matter what kind of team. Like if you've got loads of talented people, then you've just got a vibrant culture. And of course the answer is that's just not true at all. There's got to be a deliberate approach to culture building in order to get that sense of vibrancy. So pleasant cultures, there's just no chance. Never hit a deadline, never hit a target. You're very good at lessons learned. Oh, what must we do differently next time? But nothing ever changes. Combatant cultures are actually high in engagement, so people really care. They really care. They care about their job. They care about doing a good job. They care about hitting deadlines, blah, 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 blah. They just go about it in completely the wrong way. So there's a real lack of emotional intelligence. So in combatant cultures, we understand what we've got to do. We understand why it's important. We know if you're a government agency that we serve the people. We know if you're a corporate organization, we serve the stakeholder. We know what we need to do. But because we go about it in the wrong way, there's some really poor behaviors. And these behaviors can be demonstrated over years and years and years and years. These cultures are always busy. Or people always flying around. I'm really busy. I've got so many things to do. I'm really busy, really busy. Oh my God, you are. No one else is. There's lots of power. There's lots of authority. Also, what you see in combatant cultures is micromanagement. I was trading messages with my brothers recently. We were talking about latest football results, and the fact that the manager of a team that we were watching at the sideline barking at the players all game. And that's just micromanagement 101. Either there's no trust, either and you'll experience this with yourself if you've got a manager that's always there, always on your shoulder, always asking, wants to be copied into everything. But this particular example, where you could just hear him shouting, like, so doesn't trust the players to do the job. Either not enough work's been done to make sure that they understand what they need to do, or there's this sense that if I'm not on at them all the time, they'll never do it. And what it does is it saps confidence, it saps energy, it saps morale. It's all of those things. If you've ever worked in any of these cultures, you're literally fighting against yourself every day. So in combatant cultures, there's heaps of anxiety. You know, when I'm trying to ascertain the culture I'm going to be working with, I'll say things like, "It's a lot of stress." People, "Oh my God, so stressed. We're so stressed." And that's a sign. People generally aren't stressed in pleasant cultures. It's kind of fake stress because they're not really doing the work. If they did the work, they would overcome the stress. But in combatant cultures, there's generally too much work, or they're taking on too much, or they're going about it in completely the wrong way, or the behaviors are so poor that what that's doing is generating stress and generating anxiety. And often what happens is, micromanagers do this all the time. They use friction as a motivator. If we don't get this done, then the result will be, so gossip reigns in combatant cultures where people are just destructive behind each other's backs, just no emotional intelligence, really. Now, the thing about combatant cultures is they produce results. They just exhaust everybody when they do them. And that's the kind of dichotomy of combatant cultures. And so people will say things like, managers will say things like, "Oh, we've got a really great culture. We hit our targets." These are the high performance culture. We've got a really high performing culture. We never miss a target. But then their attrition rate is really high. They end up losing the people that they don't want to lose. They burn people out. Heaps of stress, heaps of anxiety, lots of personality clashes. Everything's a fight. Everything's a battle. And people, you can see it on people's faces. And now the big danger of a combatant culture is, because I'm an optimistic realist, one of the things I say is everybody needs a bit of combatant every now and again, just to remind you why we're doing the work. You don't want to stray too much down the low emotional intelligence scale. But everyone just needs a little reminder. I had a boss once who was great at this. He would just, and the way that I put it, it's a very British way of saying it, it just loses rag every now and again. Right, he would just go off on one every now and again, and he would just go, "This is not what I expect. Our job is to blah 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 blah," and it would be like a minute and a half. And you all need to have a reminder that this is what we're here to do. We're here to serve, and if we don't, blah, 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 blah. And then he would take a breath, and then he would go back to a calm tone. He was like, "This is not the kind of leader I want to be. I don't want to be shouting at you guys." And that's the great example of just a subtle reminder. Did he lose control of his emotion? A little bit. Was it poor behavior? Absolutely not. Did we feel like we'd had a talking to, even though we were adults? 100%. We did. But every team needs a little bit of that. But if it's like that all the time, then there's a good chance it will turn toxic. So how do you spot a toxic culture? Well, it's consistent. There are three levels, right? Those of you who read my stuff will know I wrote about this not so long ago. I might have talked about it on here too. There are three levels. So that combatant culture is the first level, where it's consistently like that. Long hours, high stress, high anxiety, lots of, unconscious bias, microaggressions, people apologizing all of the time. Yeah, so that's that consistently combatant. The next level is corrosive. Corrosive is bullying, harassment, aggressive profanities, the effing and the jeffing, malicious gossip, lots of blame, lots of excuses. And then the third level is harmful. Where it becomes harmful is where there's kind of physical assault, emotional cruelty, fraud, lots of self-preservation, people just looking after themselves. They really don't care about anybody else. Producing evidence and it being completely dismissed. So lies, cover-ups, those kinds of things. And it's very, very difficult to come back from a toxic culture. Very, very difficult. You literally have to take a broom to the entire senior leadership team that presided over it to have half a chance of coming back. Now, what you want in toxic cultures is for those leaders to come to their senses and actually resign. but some still cling on to their jobs and insist that it's other people's fault. And of course, that's part of the problem. And that's why you will never get out of toxic. Somebody asked me at a conference recently, he said, but not everyone deserves to lose their job. And, I made the point, I don't want anyone to lose their job. 100%, I want people to create these healthy workplace environments where everybody can flourish. But if you've presided over a culture of bullying, harassment, verbal, emotional, physical assault, then 100% you deserve to lose your job. I know people don't really talk about this. I've got no problem talking about it. Like I said, I just want people to be good humans and create these great places to work. But if you don't, then how are you still employed? Frankly, if you don't have the self-awareness, if you're not asking for the feedback, or you're not acting on it. So yes, toxic culture is very, very difficult. And toxic cultures are never a surprise. People always know. There's always been a behavior that hasn't been dealt with. There's always performance that goes and kind of flies under the radar. Where you want to be, of course, is where you've got high engagement, high emotional intelligence. Most organizations will get there accidentally, or else they've got one person who really gets culture, really gets how to do it, how to create it, how to build it. Sometimes they do it unconsciously, but they generally have the skills. A great example in the sporting world is the manager of Manchester City, Pep Guardiola, really understands what it takes to build a culture. So this is where, as a team, we define what we expect of each other. And so what do you see in vibrant cultures where you hit targets, you hit deadlines, when you miss something, you're genuinely disappointed, really, really disappointed. You interact socially, you talk about what's best for the team, not for the individual. You'll go out of your way. You as an individual will work harder. There's a lot of sports examples here, but I remember reading a piece about David Beckham. It's about the class of 99 Manchester United, this great team of kids that they had that came through that won everything, right? But David Beckham would work on his free kicks on his own for an hour and a half after training. And one of the coaching staff would do it with him. So that is a great example of high engagement, high emotional intelligence. Member of the coaching staff, 100% David. I'll be here. I'll work with you. I'll pick the balls out of the net. Sometimes it was other teammates. He was just working. Yes, great players. Yes, great staff have talent, and I wrote recently about the 5 types of employees, and 5% of your organization are stars. They're real stars. Yes, they've got talent, but geez, they work hard at their trade. They really, really work hard at it. Talent will only get you so far. Mindset gets you the rest of the way. And so they're highly engaged in what they do, and they recognize that, when they spend a little bit of time outside their comfort zone, that's when they really, really do grow. So vibrant cultures, no tolerance for poor behavior, no tolerance for poor performance. People are put on performance plans when they don't deliver. And if they continue to not deliver, or they continue to behave poorly, they're gone. They don't tolerate brilliant jerks. There's social interaction. People are happy to do it. Do they always want to do it all of the time? Not necessarily, but they recognize that it's an important part of teamwork. They're really considered in their risk taking. They'll openly challenge each other. They recognize that when you have discord, when you have disagreement, it's good. It's positive, providing that people stay in control of their emotions. Now, this is one of the things that I teach managers, and early next year, I'm going to be running a virtual program for HR leaders on how to create these kind of environments, right? Part of the answer is managers. Part of the answer is having a good culture strategy. And some vibrant cultures, what you've got is a really good culture strategy that takes you from 0 to 100, takes you from where you need to be to deliver the actual strategy, to be able to deliver to those results. And in vibrant cultures, there's a real sense that anything is possible. Listen, it's not stupidly optimistic. So they'll push back on some targets, but it'll still be a stretch target. I worked with one organization where management or senior leaders were looking for 15% growth. And one of the managers said to me, but here's the thing, he didn't say it's not possible. He said, I think another number is more realistic. I'm like, okay, well, what you need to do, because he was asking my advice on how to present it. I was like, you need to manage upwards really good. I was like, but you need to present kind of empirical evidence as to, why your number is more achievable. And his number was 12%. And they accepted it. There was a bit of backwards and forwards, but the senior leaders were like, all right, let's go with that. Because they're still getting 12% growth, right? Which is pretty amazing. And I'd done some work with the senior leaders to talk to them about the kind of culture that they need to create. So this was that real example of that two-way conversation, a little bit of friction, but in a healthy way. And so they're the signs of the different cultures that you have. Now, why is it important? I should probably have mentioned this at the start. Why is it important? It's important because only when you know where you are can you figure out what you need to do to get where you need to be. And where you need to be is a vibrant culture. It doesn't matter whether you've got a deadline to hit, a target to hit, a game to win, a race to run, whatever it is. Vibrant culture gives you the best opportunity of success. But only when you're able to spot where you are right now and then do something about it can you actually achieve it. And I'll be perfectly honest with you. This is where most of my work comes from. Is managers will become really good at spotting where they are and recognizing that in order to get to vibrant, it needs something different. And so this is where I'll get a call. We'll talk about what the requirement is, and I'll come in and either do a day or 2 days, or for bigger organizations, I'll train managers on how they can do it themselves, because that's the best way. What you want is that legacy knowledge. You want people to figure out how to do it themselves, because then they can never unlearn it. So yeah, only once you're able to spot, and of course you move through all of those cultures, generally 4 cultures, throughout the day. If you've got a toxic culture, you're there for a long period of time, and it's awful, it's terrible, and you dread getting out of bed in the morning. It's a horrible feeling. But generally, if it feels stagnant, you can kind of say to the team, "Hey, listen, we're a little off today. Why don't we focus on getting 1 or 2 things done? Let's really focus on that." If it's a pleasant culture, it's like, hey, the time for talking has stopped. It should stop. Enough, right? Let's really think about who do we need at this meeting? How long do we need them for? Let's stick to the agenda. It's a bit too nice. We need to be more ruthless, and here's how we do it. If it's a combatant culture, we have to remind people to be human in our interactions with each other. Yes, the work is important, but not to the detriment of the relationships between one another. And when you're a vibrant culture, the trick is to stay there. What's the plan of events that you need to build in order to maintain that sense of vibrancy? Who's that one person who could hold you back, and how do you get ahead of that? How do you kind of mitigate that risk before it becomes an issue? So there we go. I hope you've enjoyed today's session. I really wanted to give you a sense of being able to spot the kind of culture that you have, so that you know the actions that you need to take. But like I said, if you want to plug your data into the quiz, 5culturesquiz.com, that'll spit out a report, send it to you, and give you a sense of the things that you need to do in order to create vibrant. All right, that's it for today's session. Ta-ra for now. Thanks for listening to today's podcast. If you'd like to find out more about how I can help you transform the culture of your team, head to my website at www.colindellis.com.